the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Former Finance Minister Osan, economic advisor to the President John Dramani Mahama, Yura said Tekper de ababe to Edra say Ghana for ensusu en celebrity na 4 years aye kan ho asem no ade se emu ewa kakra na John Dramani Mahama enya ade se obetimi amanage economy ne 4 good years without say crisis bia emfiri baby ema enti one emfansho mutrim say along the line 4 years ade se enuoma mu ebetimi aye den pa de ama Ghana for enye asem kotoa o kire se aside even John Dramani Mahama no enye ije se aban bi betimi manage economy for 4 good years 8 good years na on encounter crisis bia na owie na Ghana for ebisa no say papa since when na ohia ase ehunu se aban bi eteso na obu oman na obetimi encounter crisis because die na dodam kwa Akufo-Addo ni MPP amanyoko crisis omuko omunyina NDC amanyoko no antimi anka ho asem eka se NPP amanyoko no mismanage economy into since when na se Tekper ehunu se aban bia entimi manage economy ni ye for 4 good years nana dodam kwa Akufo-Addo ni Dr. Mahmoud Bomi atimi gina wona so aside crisis ni nyina etoto enwoma ye nti die na se Tekper pese o kire say within that 4 years the one aye in the beginning na say one atete dollar so no nya de ade nyina ye camouflage na afei ebaba bedu ba bi no man ni mu aye den ana ekame say one way or the other as se Tekper boy kokko say yensusu ema ye ninyi because the aka akire no na emu eba be ye den na se Tekper na so ekasa na odi yenko tie wa bra odi sansem no etu edwase Ghana for ensusu emomani na John Dramani Mahama entimi manage economy no for 4 good years without cry yenko tie.
But let's put on the currency issue.
Yes, I'm coming to the currency. Okay, so the point there again is the president saying things are going well. Let's be careful. Let's make sure that, we have, in essence, what he's saying that, when you have, when the trend starts to reverse, make sure that you have reserves, right? To put back. Reserves, which is sacrifice. Reserve, which is sacrifice. To set reserves, as in households, as in businesses, is sacrifice, right? So when we create it, and the shifts are occurring, then we will have to fall on it, to make sure that, we stabilize the situation, because it's good to stabilize and to sustain reforms. Now, you spoke about revenue.
But revenue being affected, was that a major consideration?
Of course, revenue would have to be.
Import levy was being hit?
Wait a minute. Yes, because our revenue today is a factor. Yeah. And I'm saying, let me illustrate. Our revenue today, right? And I'm talking revenue, not tax revenue. Our revenue today is about 15%. Right? 17%.
Okay. Tax GDP ratio?
Yes. Okay. The tax GDP ratio is around 15%.
Okay.
The revenue is around 17-18%. But as a middle income country that we have become, it is our tax to GDP ratio that should be 17%, 18%. Even for an African country. It is not 15%. And that is why, we are the president, the minister, and others have spoken about getting technical assistance in order to bring the VAT regime back to where it was. And then the president said it would affect the entire, revenue consideration when the debates were going on. And therefore, the levies that are being imposed, we have had a temporary levy policy where, you have sunset clauses. You use them during austerity and then you remove them. In other words, they are similar to your counter-cyclical measures. When you, so let me use a practical example, which is true. When we went into COVID globally, right? You remember that's when Zoom, and telephony and things, hit a boom, right? Therefore, that's when, and because many of these are done through the banking sector, that's when you have your FinSec levy. Because it is not the whole sector that is depressed. There's a sector that is doing well on account of we being at home. And therefore, meetings were being done on the laptop, on the phone, and whatever. It means that that sector, is booming. So you put a temporary levy on it, right? You put a temporary levy on it. Of course, a time will come when COVID will be over. And it did. Right? And today, yes, there's some stability in the use of Zoom and the other, but it's not at the peak when it was, in a crisis, when they were favorable. So, to summarize again, all that we are saying is that you cannot manage an economy without crisis. You cannot manage an economy continuously for 4 years, 3-4 years, without one crisis or the right. Right? Mpox. Mpox is in the news.
Yeah.
Right? How are we preparing for it? Or how did we prepare for it? Have we put some reserves, learning from COVID, so that when Mpox comes, we fall on those reserves, to manage? And that is when the reserves you are keeping, because you will have to tackle it. That's when you take the reserves, right, to manage it. I mean, this is not saying you are manipulating the markets. No, you are only managing the economy because...
And the question they are asking is, can a self-confessed errand boy be privy to, understand, and appreciate national security operations and the funding thereof? Regrettably, there's nothing in this witness statement which incriminates the accused person. These are the words of the lawyers. I don't know what the position that the judge will take, but these are the words of the lawyers. And we're sharing it with you as a matter of public interest. Now, he's saying here that the person that is your witness statement says of himself that I'm an errand boy to Kwabena Dubois. He sent me to go and buy him Yokagari and sends me to go and buy him Wache and sends me to the bank and sends me to do everything. He said, okay, how many times did he send you to the bank? He said, he sends me to the bank every Wednesday. About how much money do you collect? Hey, it's a lot of money, oh. Hey, my boss, when he sends me to the bank, money is in Ghana, must go back. It's a lot. What do you do with the money? Well, when I take it from the bank, sometimes I bring it to him. Sometimes I bring it here. And then it appears he was asked, do you send some to his wife? Because there's a headline who says that I did not send any money to Kwabena Dubois. So he says, no, I didn't send any money to his wife. So the conversation here is that if you are prosecuting a boss and you want to find out that the boss of a national security system has misappropriated money, the way to do it is not to call his errand boy and say, yeah, he's sent to go to the bank. He doesn't know what it is for. He doesn't know. He just goes to collect the money and he brings it. But that is one of the principal witnesses for the prosecution. And the defense lawyers are suggesting that this might not work. But it depends on what the court will do. The next one, prosecution witness statement of Edith Ruby Opoku Edumoa. And he says that, can we assume that the witness has obtained national security clearance to violate his oath of confidentiality and testify on matters of national security consequence and ramifications? As paragraph 7, the witness states the following, quote, the operational accounts, however, were managed by the director of the BNC and supervised by the National Security Coordinator. The defense lawyers are suggesting to us that inside the witness statement, there's a line which really reveals everything. And tonight we have letters to show you that indeed, bosses of Kwabena Dubois supervised the work that he was doing with those humongous sums of money. It says this is the witness speaking, that the operational account, this is a witness who works there. This is not just an errand boy. This is somebody who works there, and that's why they're asking whether he has had national security clearance. Anyway, you may say that the government can clear him and they don't have to tell the defense counsel. That's possible. But let's look here. 7 paragraph. It says, the operational accounts, however, were managed by the director of the BNC, which is the first accused Kwabena Dubois, and supervised by the National Security Coordinator. So the question is, National Security Coordinator, did you truly supervise this account? Then if the prosecution is concerned about the way the accounts were supervised, they can charge the National Security Coordinator as A2 if they want. Let's move on and see a little bit more. Thus, he continues, thus checks were written upon the instructions of the director of the BNC, and the reasons for payments were never disclosed to the head of finance. So the guy says that the account was supervised. This is in the witness statement. that account was supervised by the National Security Coordinator. And so the checks that were written upon instructions of the BNC director and the reasons for payment were never disclosed to him, head of finance, because it is supervised by them. They write the checks, they don't tell him the reason why. That is the way in which things are done. They don't tell them the reason why. He says, and this is the point, it's a question. Is this not a self-confession that at the level of operational accounts, not even the national security operatives may be able to interpret and come to terms with the reasons behind the expenditures? By this implication and necessary admission, how can anybody interpret expenditures touching on operational matters as misappropriated for personal gain? And I may add, without the confirmation of the boss, the National Security Minister, the National Security Coordinator. If you bring an errand boy to say, I took money, or you bring the head of finance who is saying to you that the way they do it there, I don't get to know what the money is for. It's between the National Security Coordinator and the BNC boss. They take the money and they do their operations. It's an operational account. I don't know it. Now, so coded is this operational account that if you look at the bank and the accounts, the check name, the checkbook, the name of the checkbook is a BNC account. But if you look at the email trail from the relationship between Iyoko and the banks in the investigation, the account is not called BNC. It is called the National Security Coordinator's account. That's the proper name. But the checkbook is not written as National Security Coordinator account because they don't want everybody in the bank. They print the checks, they bring it, and I'm going to say, hey, National Security account, hey, wait, no. So the checkbook bears a different name for the real account. So when the check comes to the bank and it goes to a teller and they see it and they enter it, they will see National Security account and they take it to their boss. Like, hey, boss, they brought some check, your people, please. And then they deal with it. So it is in the witness statement. So what the lawyers are telling us is that even if you look at their own witness statement, they have admitted that there's a hierarchy through which this process goes. And without that hierarchy, you cannot incriminate anyone. Tonight, there's more that we have found in the laws of the National Signals Bureau Act that was passed by Parliament. And we're going to share that with you in a minute. Let me rush through it so we don't spend too much time. So this is a very important point I have to re-emphasize. And he says that it's a self-confession that at the level of operational accounts, not even national security operatives, that is those who work there, not even them may be able to interpret and come to terms with the reasons behind expenditures. By this implication, and the necessary admission, how can anybody interpret expenditures touching on operational matters as misappropriated funds for personal gain? Obviously, the story goes on. Edith Rubio Pokua Edumwa is totally not aware that the private company by name BNC Communication Bureau Limited, which she asserts is owned and controlled by Kwabena Edubuahin and his wife, and had a bank account with UMB Bank, was a national security arrangement engineered by the late Joshua Chairman at all material times, the National Security Coordinator, of course. So the point is that the national security operative that the investigators are talking to, the lawyers are suggesting to us that lady does not even know that this BNC account, which she thinks is owned by Kwabena Edubuahin, was actually directed to be opened by Joshua Chairman. And we have a letter here to that effect. Let me read and I'll bring you the letter. The checks issued by the intended witness in the sums of 1 million, 21 million were mere mundane duties of a director of finance at the National Signals Bureau who did not have an understanding of what they were intended for. It is apparent that at her level, there are some confidential matters in the realm of national security operations that she is not even permitted to know. On her own showing, the entire statement of the intended witness is of no evidential value, as she cannot pontificate what she does not know or even understand. Now, the point about it's not being of evidential value is a statement of the lawyers. As I said before, it doesn't mean that the court will accept that there's no evidential value. That doesn't mean that. The court may also accept. The court may not accept. But we are sharing it with you. It's a matter of public interest. It's very, very important that we share these things with you. Now, prosecution witness statement from Frank Marshall. So there's another guy, Frank Marshall Cromwell, who is the investigator. This is what they said. Frank Marshall Cromwell is an investigator of Iyoko and Iyoko's conveyor belt. He is merely relaying the suspicions and interpretations of matters Iyoko does not understand by reason of the operational character of the previous national security arrangement, which to all intents and purposes, the previous Minister for National Security and the National Security Coordinator are custodians of those confidential and submarine undertakings. Perhaps the story continues. The entire investigation team have ignored Mr. Joseph Tremer's letter to Advantage Solutions to open the BNC Communication Bureau account with the UNB Bank. Again, Iyoko has mentioned ISC Holdings contract, but has failed or refused or neglected to make ISC Holding a material witness to consolidate their case of a ruse of a supply of cybersecurity equipment. Now, what's he saying? The point he's making is that the contract between the national security and the ISC has been part of the conversation, that they could see some money moved to ISC. And he's saying that the allegations from the investigators is that this ISC contract was used as a ruse for people to steal money. That's really part of the case they are making. And the defense opinion is that if truly ISC account or ISC contract to supply was used as a ruse to steal money, how come that the ISC is not a witness? How come that the ISC took the opportunity to write to ISC and said, we have heard that you are in a matter. Come and tell us what happened. Did you truly supply equipment or did you not? I'll come to the ISC letter. Please get it ready. I'll call it for it very soon. It goes on to say that there's a gaping hole in the prosecution's case against the backdrop that the cybersecurity equipment has been duly supplied by the ISC Holdings to the benefit of the national security of Ghana. Equally, there's a huge assumption that the designation of what the sum of 49 million of over 49 million for the acquisition of a cybersecurity equipment is what the heads of national security intended the money to be used for. Indeed, Iyoko is bereft of, that's the West, understanding that classifications of expenditure could be decoys for other operational purposes. Now, what he's trying to say here is that the investigators are misleading themselves. That's what he's saying. The investigators don't think they are misleading themselves, but this is what the point he's making. That the investigators are misleading themselves because they are assuming that 49.1 million, which they saw in the account, was all intended to pay for the cybersecurity equipment. No, it wasn't. The cybersecurity equipment was paid out of that. And in fact, it's not all the cybersecurity money that was paid out of that account. They run different accounts and pay different things from different places. So they pay the cybersecurity out of that, and then they use the rest for other things, which was sanctioned by the hierarchy. That's really the point. Okay, let's move on and see what else we have. It says that there is no nexus between the properties listed and the crime Iyoko is trying to urge upon the court. If the properties were acquired through the proceeds of a crime, then the acquisition should be contemporaneous with the lodgement of 49 million lodged in the BNC Communication Bureau Limited accounts with the UNB. Let me explain this as well. We've heard, and Dominic Ayini told us, that Kwabena Dubois has a lot of properties. He bought 27 houses. He has some estates in Fafraha and all of that. Is it Fafraha or somewhere they mentioned in Achimota also? So the opinion of the defense is that you must, as a prosecution, tie a nexus between the amount of money being discussed at the time it was in the bank and at the time that these properties were bought. So if, for instance, you are investigating a 49 million matter which occurred in 2020, and properties had been acquired in 2017, and because you see that the properties are for the accused person, you say that, oh, he also has properties, but the properties were acquired before the 49 million scandal or whatever that you are investigating, then it doesn't really add up. Now, the defense opinion also is that those properties do not belong to Kwabena Dubois and his wife. That is a business they do. Kwabena Dubois and his wife have a platform where people give them money for them to build their houses for them.